Quick question. Which popular manga or anime do you low-key not find that interesting or, rather, not understand the hype around? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Anyway, on to the video. To the feeble and oblivious humans, doom and destruction came without warning. With the destruction came the League, a cursed death game initiated by the supreme beings of the universe. As the dreadful game progressed, humanity gradually vanished, losing not only their lives, but also their home. The situation was dreadful. Human life was reduced to nothing more than garbage, easily disposed of. Despite all that, it was fine, as humanity was about to succeed. After endless suffering in the death game, they had finally reached the final round, the round to reverse everything, the round to get it all back. The scene switches to humanity's last savior. Despite his mangled body and the inferno of the battlefield, he stands resolute, his iron will palpable. In an Itachi-like move, he fires his attack, sending a telekinetic orb at the enemy. This attempt, however, ends pathetically, easily blocked by the enemy's barrier. With a maniacal grin, the enemy mocks him. He had been so close, but inevitably, this is where it ends. This sadistic bastard was Administrator J, the supreme being in charge of Area 2, aka Earth Sector, and more specifically Seoul, South Korea. Upon releasing his attack, humanity's last savior, the one person everything banked on, finally collapsed, the grave wounds taking their toll. Behind the fallen hero, a silhouette emerges, one equally as wounded as him. With an anguished shout, the survivor yells, telling the hero to get up. But, as expected, the dead don't reply. Administrator J, as if mocking their useless resistance, casually steps on the corpse of a fallen warrior. In his cocky voice, he explains the situation. A disruptive species that completes the League will be given the chance to reverse everything. This was a reward offered by the universe. Of course, it was rare for most species to seize that chance, even if it was so freely given. Actually, it was so rare that even for him, an administrator, it was the first time witnessing it directly. Ultimately, they had failed. Despite how far they had come, this was the limit of humanity's so-called saviors. Saying so, we finally get to see the true face of the universe, and it is terrifying. Contrary to what one might believe, the true manifestation of the universe was one of horror. A giant vertical pupil with a backdrop of galaxies squirming within. Admin J, as if awed by the dreadful sight, tells the survivor to rejoice. Despite their pathetic defeat, she should be grateful that the universe had its attention on them. If she had a dying wish, he'd grant it. Of course, it was solely for his amusement, so she shouldn't get cocky. The survivor, bearing through the pain, takes a moment to consider. Soon, however, her voice rings out, announcing her wish. She'd like a do-over, a chance to fight for their survival. Laughing mockingly at the outrageous request, Jay replies that it was out of his authority. Maybe the gods could fulfill her wish. Desperate, and without any more cards to play, the survivor collapses, all hope finally gone. Jay, like the sadistic bastard he is, casually turns and walks away, bidding farewell to the last survivor. Sword Star Jin Jaehee. As the Sword Star lay bloody, her life force fading, a system notification sounds, announcing the results of the round. It states that Round 8 had ended, the faction Vast Expanse and their monarch Kang Sheon were destroyed. The current number of survivors was 1. That number, however, soon dropped to 0 as Jaehee also perished, likely due to her wounds. Just like that, the League failed, Earth was destroyed, and humanity's fate was concluded. That should have been the end, but in typical manhwa fashion, Jaehee startles awake, alerted by her alarm. She takes a moment lazing in bed before the grim reality finally dawns on her, causing her to jerk upright in a start. Gazing warily at her hands, her trophy table, and the messy room around her, she comes to a conclusion. This was her studio apartment. With a puzzled look, she wonders what the hell is going on. Her thoughts, however, are interrupted by a message alert. The Chad, Lee Ho-sung, had texted, asking if she was up. Jaehee, like a junkie craving a fix, reached for her phone, studying it intensely. She soon realizes that she is 10 years in the past, and, as expected, all her friends, the dear comrades she'd lost in the League, were also alive. Although surprising, there was no doubt about it. She had regressed 10 years. But how was this possible? The bastard Jay had said it was beyond his authority, so how was she there? Well, None of that mattered to her at the moment. If she was indeed back in the past, then it must mean the savior was still alive as well. There wasn't time to waste. Moves had to be made. Rocking her hat, she immediately left the house, her gaze resolute. If they were to survive, then she had to find Kang Sheon. The League was a place that, no matter how many strong players you gathered, it would be useless as it heavily demanded faction warfare. To stand a chance at victory, it was necessary to involve the one player who came closest to achieving victory. The great monarch of vast expanse, Kang Sheon. Running through the silent streets, the same streets that would soon be engulfed by carnage and chaos, Jaehee swore to find the hero. This time, she'd start with him from the beginning. We cut to a construction site where men are hard at work. Well, not all of them, as some bastards are chilling around gossiping. One of the men expresses his amazement at a young man's diligence. He remarks that nowadays, most kids would quit instantly when given the same workload. However, if he were to be frank, the kid was pathetically weak for a laborer. The weak laborer turns out to be Sheon, the future savior of humanity. Right now, however, he is a temp worker hauling cheeks at a construction site. With his work done, he finally rests, amazing everyone by the sheer volume of the load he carried. The gossiping man turns to Sheon, advising him to take it easy. If he continued like that, he'd only wear himself out. Sheon, a respectful Chad, readily agrees, settling down for some well-needed rest. Addressing the MC, the old man asks about his schooling. Did he completely give up on that? He remarks that with his brain, he'd be able to enter a prestigious university easily. Sheon casually replies that universities won't put food on his table. The old man, a bit bothered by the weight of his words, asks if he had any compelling reason to work so hard. Sheon, with a calm gaze, replies that money is more than enough of a reason. He has to work hard so that his younger sibling can live more comfortably. Understanding his situation, the old man hands him an envelope. Inside was the day's wages. He'd even added a bit more for him. Sheon, puzzled by the early pay, questions the old man. The latter replies that he had already done his part, so he should head home. Besides, it was his brother's birthday, so he had to make it back early. Addressing the puzzled Sheon, the old gossip asks if he'd given some thought to the birthday gift. Sheon replies that, of course, he has something in mind. We cut to the Onyx shopping mall, where an enthusiastic saleswoman is welcoming Sheon. The MC, as casual as ever, replies that he is looking for a gift for his younger sibling. The woman, with some dollar signs in her eyes, immediately suggests a designer jacket, saying it would go great over the teen's school uniform. And since he is a handsome poppy, she'd throw in a 30% discount, giving it away for the fair price of $119,000. Sheon, unswayed by the glazing, calmly considers the offer. If it was $120,000, then it meant an entire day's wage. That was hella expensive. If he bought the same jacket at the thrift shop where he got his windbreaker, he'd only pay $30,000, although he doubted his brother would like it. Buying the jacket meant he'd be tight on food and electricity bills for the whole month. Damn, bro's really going through it. Before he could decide, his phone rang, drawing his attention. On the other end of the line was his brother Junho, reminding him of his birthday and asking for some chicken. Of course, Junho understood money was tight, so if it wasn't possible, he'd be more than happy to eat his usual meals. Sheon, smiling slightly at his brother's thoughtfulness, decides to make the purchase. The kid has only one birthday a year. He can afford to go all out. He promises to bring home some chicken, so Junho should hurry up and decide what kind he wants. As expected, the kid is delighted, thanking him wholeheartedly. Turning to the saleswoman, he expresses his interest in buying the jacket. Before he can finish speaking, however, the lady has already packaged the jacket. It's good to go. Even when he wants to count the money just to make sure it's all there, the lady swiftly snatches it from his hands, handing him the package and thanking him for his patronage. Damn, bitch, hold up. Let our boy think. Sheon, a bit dazed by how fast things are going, calmly accepts the package. With a smile on his face, he remarks that this is the priciest purchase he's ever made. He's sure Junho will love it. His thoughts, however, are interrupted by a commotion in front of him. A bit puzzled, Sheon gazes at the crowd, wondering what's going on. From the NPC's banter, he gathers that the elevators have apparently broken down, hence the commotion. This fact shocks Sheon, as the elevators had been working perfectly fine when he used them a few minutes ago. In addition, the escalators are also down. The whole thing is bizarre. Not thinking too much about it, he decides to take the stairs. He has a birthday to get to and can't afford to be late. Making his way to the emergency exit, he's met with yet another bizarre situation. The stairs are also blocked, driving the people back with black, ominous smoke that seeps from within. Xian, not familiar with the usual horror tropes, casually nears the stairs, wanting to check them out for himself. He notes the ominous black smoke yet can't smell anything burning. Getting even closer, he peers into the darkness. To his surprise, however, an invisible force pushes him back, loudly slamming the door in his face. Xian, taken aback by the odd situation, wonders what the hell is going on. The NPC's banter around him doesn't help, as the bots are more focused on reporting tweets than actually solving the mystery they've found themselves in. In that horrible situation, the PA system comes on, bringing with it more bad news. It announces the closure of the mall. All customers are to leave immediately. As expected, the tense atmosphere heightens, with most wondering if there's a fire. After all, why else would they want everyone to leave? Xian, a bit more level-headed than the rest, notes that it isn't a fire. If it were, it would have been announced. They probably issued the order because of the mysterious black smoke. Moreover, there's something the bots haven't figured out yet. Not only are the elevators down, but also the phones. It isn't just the data, it's the whole service. This hints that the scope of the problem might extend beyond the mall. Just what the hell is going on? In the midst of the crowd's panic and crazed ramblings, a bizarre change occurs, one straight out of a video game. Blue system interfaces appear before their eyes, floating silently in front of them. Although they don't know it yet, this marked the beginning of the destruction, the doom that came without warning. The system notification, although sounding casual, shares some very dire and dreadful news. It announces that earthlings have been designated as a disrupting species in the cosmic ecosystem. In accordance with assembly rules, the population of earthlings must be reduced. All humans, except for the needed population, will be immediately disposed of as part of the annihilation policy. Of course, all of this is mandatory, and the pathetic earthlings have no right to refuse. Their only salvation is to prove their worth through the League. Only players are granted the qualification to participate in the League. As the dire situation settles in, gradually erasing the confusion that had plagued Xian before, a bitter scream sounds, drawing him from his thoughts. The source of the scream is a woman losing her shit. The other NPCs, equally shocked, curse the lady. She'd almost scared them to death. Before they can pile on more insults, the true reason for her scream becomes apparent, and ironically, it also becomes Xian's first impression of the League. Turning around, he faces what can only be described as a Sura, a true hell on earth. Gazing back at them is a giant crimson eye, an eye attached to a colossal flying behemoth that resembles a whale. The beast, upon studying the inferior humans, quickly loses interest and flies away. As expected, in the face of such an incomprehensible situation, the people lose their shit, scrambling to escape. When confronted with chaos, humans always react the same way. Desperate self-preservation. As such, they clumsily flee, showing no concern for anything but themselves. Xian, caught up in the chaos, also panics. However, his reason for worry extends beyond self-preservation. Forget about the monsters rampaging outside. Forget about the people losing their shit. The only thing he cares about is that, currently, Junho is home all alone. When that grim realization sets in, he immediately springs into action. The elevator malfunctioned, and the power is out, so that's not an option. The stairs are also blocked by the black smoke, so that's definitely out as well. That leaves the escalator. Although it's off, he doesn't care about that for now. To his shock, however, the black smoke has already spread to the escalator, ruling that out as well. Cursing his luck, Xian wonders when the black smoke spread that far. As it turns out, the malfunction is the least of their worries. Turning around, he runs with as much speed as his body can handle. He is resolute to escape the mall no matter what. Offering a silent prayer, he begs Junho to wait for him. His brother will definitely come for him. We cut to the second basement level of the mall. Some of the NPCs who've escaped to this place are currently scared shitless. Before them are the green vile monsters we all know. Goblins. As the green bastards clap cheeks, we get some unfortunate info about the cursed game. Even before the League officially starts, 1/4 of the world's population has already been eliminated. As shocking as it might seem, the reason for that is simple, likely playing out in different parts of the world as if by design. Some are killed for not accepting their reality, others die because they are too scared to move, and others still die because they fail to outrun the foes. No matter what form it takes, the underlying reason is always the same: hesitation in a situation that requires immediate response. As the goblins chase down the fleeing bots, eager to add them to the dreadful statistics, a familiar figure stands resolute, the only one not affected by the chaos. Jaehee, finally arriving at the scene, notes that the first ironclad rule, the goat, Kang Sheon, had taught his people was not to hesitate in the face of danger. If they want to live, they have to move without the slightest hesitation. If they don't want to be the ones who die, they have to let their bodies do the talking. Saying so, she blitzes past the goblins, slashing them to pieces. As she bathes the ground with the goblins' blood, shredding the vile creatures like their cheese, she offers a gentle wish to the goat. The current challenge might be dreadful to the present him, but it's nothing to the past him. It will take her approximately 3 hours to climb the stairs and get to him. So in that time, he has to survive. He has to show her the reason he's the goat. He has to show her that he can end that dreadful league. We cut back to the shopping mall, where Sheon, the target of Jaehee's hopes and wishes, is currently making his way through the ominous building. After checking the last available door, it finally dawns on him that they are indeed trapped. There are no more places to check. The bots, in typical bot fashion, are still losing their shit, running around like headless chickens. With mob mentality in full effect and their reasoning hindered by panic, they run around the place looking for any way out. Sheon, equally spooked and helpless, notes the futility of their actions. There was no way out of that hell. In the midst of their panic, the mob didn't notice the sudden arrival of a mysterious entity among them. The lady, who honestly stood out like a sore thumb, calmly listened to the bot's ramblings, a mocking grin plastered on her face. With a calm demeanor that had no place in that panicked hell, she casually clapped her hands, drawing the bot's attention. In a loud voice, she greeted the panicked crowd, expressing her wish to wrap things up quickly. This mysterious mommy was Administrator K, a member of the Cosmic Ecosystem Management Bureau. K, like an artist putting on a show, explained the dire situation to the crowd. Human beings were selected as a disruptive species and are therefore to be eliminated. She expressed her regret for their untimely demise, but honestly, I'm calling bullshit on that. That mocking smile on her lips isn't fooling anyone. A random bot, with the typical apocalypse dumb questions, asked Kay if the Bureau could let them go, even if just this once. Another one chimed in, chastising Kay for putting on such an act to scare them. She wasn't an employee of the mall, so what the hell was she doing? He further added that, at first glance, if you forgot about the dreadful situation, she looked like a crazy person. As expected, this insult hit deep, and Kay's demeanor instantly changed. Her wide smile shifted to a more insane one. I honestly don't know how people can be this oblivious in an apocalypse. Damn. Can't they read the room? Kay, gathering herself and suppressing the rage within, mocked the crowd. It seemed not everyone had the sense to recognize an opportunity when handed one. Snapping her fingers, she offered them a choice. They could either go to the green circle to accept the annihilation policy or go to the red circle to reject it. If they chose red, they would obviously forfeit their chance to participate in the league, so they should choose carefully. She gave them 5 minutes to decide. We learn that, as much as humanity is set to be annihilated, the Bureau can't just do as they please. There are still rules protecting the rights of doomed species. One example of this is the right to choose to participate in the league and, by extension, fight for survival. It's ironic how the same organization that demands your extinction is tied down by its own laws. Back to the bots. As expected, they all ran to the red circle. Rejecting the annihilation policy was a no-brainer for them. They wanted to get that shit over with so they could continue with their lives. To their surprise, however, a lone figure entered the green circle, eliciting a few shocked yelps. This figure, who chose the green circle and by extension supported the annihilation of his species, was none other than the hero, Sheon. Sheon, visibly tense from the death glares he was receiving, remarked that although he didn't fully understand nor agree with the policy, one thing was for certain. The green circle was their only hope of survival. Kay, delighted by his odd choice, grinned widely. From her predatory vibes, it was obvious this bitch was a sadist. The rest of the mob, not understanding our boy's choice, chastised him. What the hell did he think he was doing? How could he agree to such a crazy thing? If he knew what was good for him, he should hurry over to the red circle. Sheon, however, stood resolute. He knew he'd made the right choice. The only question left was, what would happen next? As he pondered the next development, an eerie yet cheerful voice sounded in his head, greatly shocking him. This voice belonged to the sadistic K. She told him not to worry. No one but the two of them could hear the voice transmission. In her usual cheery tone, she proposed an offer to Xian. If he could get the majority of people in the red circle to switch sides, he'd be handsomely compensated. The quest had no penalties, so he needn't worry about that. Xian, taken aback by the sudden development, took a moment to consider. If all the strange things he'd seen so far were indeed real and he wasn't tripping on some mushrooms, then this was a matter of life and death. Turning to the mob, he shouted to get their attention. He urged them to switch sides if they wanted to live. As expected, the bots weren't having it. One bot, in particular, threw shade at our boy, telling him to cut the bullshit. Did he think this was a game? Or maybe a Netflix movie? He should shut the hell up and switch sides already. I swear there's always one asshole in times like this. I don't know if it's a trope in manhwa, but this shit really pisses me off. Xian, undeterred by the shade he just caught, continued his pleas. He explained to them that based on the pop-up info they received, humans were to be annihilated. This was a mandatory thing, one they couldn't reject. Moreover, the info specified a saving grace for humanity, one that would conserve the necessary population, the League. As things stood, what they were opposing wasn't the annihilation policy, but instead the League. In other words, by standing in the red circle, they were basically rejecting the chance to survive. His words cut deep, scaring the shit out of the mob. Among them, there were obviously people who'd already realized the world had changed, but due to doubt and maybe mob mentality, they found themselves in the red circle. If what Xian said was true, even if there was just a tiny chance of it being true, then they were gambling with their own lives. So, even as the clock wound down and only seconds were left to change their minds, the crowd still ran, switching sides from the red to green circle. Everyone except the rogue bastard and his girl switched sides. This development obviously delighted Xian, as not only did he convince them, but he'd also won the bet with K. Despite this achievement, however, he still felt uneasy. What would happen next? He really hoped everything K said was fake, because if not... Soon the time ran out, and the brutality of the death game finally became apparent to them. In a bloody twist, the bastard and his girl were blown the fuck up, their mangled corpses sent flying everywhere. The bots, understandably petrified by this development, freaked out, the grim reality of how close they were to death finally setting in. Xian, equally spooked, cursed. It seemed everything K said was indeed true. They were truly in hell. K, oblivious to his thoughts, approached Xian. In her usual cheery voice, she congratulated him for completing the task. Like a true psycho, she rubbed the spattered blood on his cheek, a maniacal smile on her lips. Keeping true to her word, she handed Xian his reward, a firearm. She informed him that firearms were prohibited before the League, but she was giving it to him as a special reward. The gun had 10 bullets left, so he should be careful with their usage, as the only way to get more was to purchase from them. Picking up on this detail, Xian asked if they would be selling items separately. Kay replied that he'd find out about it eventually, so there was no rush. Switching topics, she asked if he was good with guns, as shit was about to go down. True to her words, the whole building shook, rattling the mobs. Before they could process what the hell was going on, a blood-curdling scream sounded from the stairway. A man was running down the staircase, desperately begging to be saved. Before he could get far, however, a beast lunged at him, biting a chunk off his neck. As the beast finished off the man, ripping his body to shreds, Xian recalled the words of Kay. The League had already started. Speaking of the sadistic freak, she popped confetti for them, officially welcoming them to the death game. With a maniacal laugh, she urged them to accept reality and do their best in the tutorial. With that, she faded away, leaving them to their slaughter. The panicked crowd, desperate and without any means to resist, ran for their lives, their earlier confidence crumbling. In a sickening twist, the goblins hunted them down, shredding and feasting on their flesh like they were mere animals. Xian, now hiding behind a counter, cursed his luck. Who said the League was a chance for survival? This was clearly just an all-out slaughter, a massacre of the human species. Despite the dire situation, he was resolute not to die. He had to survive somehow and get to his brother. Unbeknownst to him, a goblin had sneaked up on him, its dagger poised to attack. With a sickening shriek, the little bastard charged at Xian, the shiny dagger at the ready. Xian, flustered by the sudden development, reacted instinctively, shielding himself from harm. Luckily for him, the light from his phone blinded the goblin, causing the bastard to trip. As it fell, the little fiend still got its lick, managing to slice Xian on the waist. Checking his wound, Xian noted that although it hurt, it wasn't that deep. However, there was no telling what would happen if he got hit again. He might actually die. Deciding to run away, he glanced back at the goblin, wanting to confirm its position. To his surprise, however, the little bastard was struggling on the floor, barely able to pick itself up. Xian hesitated. Should he run away? If he did that, the goblin would surely catch up to him. Then, should he fight? That was even more preposterous. How was he supposed to fight something like that? Finding no other solution, he cursed his luck. While others went on trips after college, here he was dealing with such shit. And on the day of his brother's birthday, no less. However, despite his doubts and terror, he knew he couldn't die there. He couldn't leave his brother all alone in that ruined world. Reaffirming his resolve, he lunged at the goblin, stabbing the cheeked-up bastard straight through the back. With an iron grip and a resolute gaze, he took his first life in the Cursed League. Predictably, Xian was traumatized by the whole experience. It was just a day ago that he was howling cheeks at the construction site. Yet now he was clapping goblin cheeks in a death game. The whole change seemed too bizarre. What made it worse was that he could still feel the goblin's heartbeat through his palm. Of course, it was nothing but a phantom sensation. However, it still felt nasty all the same. Grabbing his hand, Xian took deep breaths to steady himself. Now wasn't the time for such bitch-ass feelings. If he wanted to make it out alive, killing the goblins was inevitable. Reaffirming his resolve, Xian turned his attention to the general bots, and as expected, the situation wasn't looking good. Because of the panic, the crowd wasn't fighting back at all, and the goblins, as expected of such vile creatures, were taking the opportunity to absolutely annihilate the crowd. With their tiny daggers and suspiciously long tongues, the little fiends were slowly but surely hunting down the players. Despite the pandemonium, Xian couldn't help but notice an odd phenomenon. The menacing fiends, despite their brutal nature, were surprisingly clumsy. It wasn't an exaggeration to state that half of their hunting activity was spent on the ground. Puzzled by this, Xian wondered what the hell was up with them. Soon, an idea came to mind. But was it really so? Surely it couldn't be right. We switch back to the brutal massacre still ongoing. One bot, dreading his demise, howled cheeks, frantically trying to escape a pursuing goblin. With a pathetic bitch cry, he begged for someone to save him. Come on, man. At least do something. No man should be this much of a bitch. Xian, answering to his sissy cries, grabbed the little lady, pulling him from the goblin's clutches. Because of the sudden intervention, the goblin lost its target, ending up crashing pathetically due to momentum. Gazing at the cheeked-up fiend in a downright suspect pose, Xian finally confirmed his suspicions. The little bastards were beyond clumsy. Once tackled to the ground, they found it hard to get back up again. Well, if that was the case, then the little shits weren't a challenge at all. With that thought in mind, Xian grabbed his iron rod and used it to bash the shit out of the fallen goblin, leaving its pathetic mug on full display. With the fall of the enemy, our boy gained the needed confidence to fight back. Addressing the panicking crowd, he let them in on the discovery. He advised them to dodge the goblins or find another way to tackle them to the ground. Predictably, the crowd was puzzled. What the hell was the dude talking about? And besides, when did he get the time to chat so idly? Didn't he see them getting their asses clapped? Well, it didn't matter. What other choice did they have? They might as well try it out and see. With that thought, the bots swiftly dodged the goblin's charge, causing the fiends to crash clumsily. Noticing the helpless creatures futilely trying to recover, the crowd did what all humans did best: kick them when they're down. Using the clothing rods, they brutalized the goblins, successfully venting all their pent-up rage. Xian, emboldened by the positive change, addressed the crowd. He let them know about the goblins' weakness: their lower body. Apparently, the bastards were on some Johnny Bravo type shit. Their upper bodies were way bigger compared to their lower bodies, not to mention all them cheeks they were packing. Because of that, they were surprisingly easy to trip over, and once that happened, they were essentially easy prey for the picking. Demonstrating this, Xian yeeted the shit out of a goblin, sending the creature reeling. The crowd, desperate and willing to bet anything on their survival, immediately agreed. If it meant they could survive, then they were willing to do anything. One bot, in particular, stared at Xian like he'd seen his messiah. Just who the hell was this mysterious student? We cut to a while later after the crowd finished mopping up the goblins. With Xion's instructions, it was easy money to take down the baleful foes. Although gassed out, the crowd was relatively intact, with most having survived the tragic event. Speaking of Xion, the little hero was catching his breath, his face painted with the goblin's blood. From the looks of it, he most likely did the carrying in the group. As he was resting, an unfamiliar face approached him, thanking him for his earlier guidance. It was only because of him that most managed to survive. With a polite smile, the stranger introduced himself as Kwon Kyung-soo, a veteran in the Army's Special Forces. Xion, gazing at the handsome unit, noted that he could be a worthy companion for their hellish journey in the death game. However, now wasn't the time to carelessly get close to anyone. Who knew what they'd do in the ensuing chaos? Shrugging off his greeting, he casually explained his earlier deduction. It's basically everything we already know. However, for Kyung-soo, it was nothing short of amazing. To think the little Chad could associate the cheeky goblins with clumsiness. The mind needed to catch that weakness and lead people in that chaos was nothing short of remarkable. Done with his glazing, Kyung-soo asked Xion what his plans were. Xion replied that he had a general idea. However, the state of the crowd was terrible. Most of them had lost their loved ones, and some had completely broken down mentally. Getting anything done with their help was basically impossible. That being the case, they might as well act on their own, even if it's just the two of them. Leading Kyung-soo towards the cabinets, Xion asked for his help in setting up a barricade. Because of the goblins' weak legs, they wouldn't be able to climb up, and with the protection of the barricade, they could easily pick them off with hanger rods. This was their only way to survive, especially since the hellish shit didn't seem to be over just yet. From what the crazy Administrator Jay had said, they were currently in the tutorial, and since the psychotic bitch hadn't shown up already, it meant the tutorial was still ongoing. Kyung-soo, taken aback by Xion's rationale, stared silently at the Chad. Everything the young hero had said seemed to be true. To think a college student would have such a mind. How truly remarkable he was. Deciding to be helpful and not be labeled as a Sakura, he helped Xion set up the barricade. The rest of the crowd, at least those with the sense to act, immediately noticed their intentions and approached Xion. They offered their help in setting up a barricade. If it meant keeping the gross fiends at bay, they were willing to do anything. Xion, taken aback by their voluntary approach, analyzed the crowd. In their midst, he noted small children, some even as young as Junho. To think such innocent souls had to go through such hell. However, now wasn't the time to get lost in his thoughts. Locking back in, he instructed the crowd on how to place the barricade. As for their personal safety, he instructed them to move around in pairs and use anything they could find as weapons. With the instructions out of the way, the crowd immediately got busy fortifying their position as much as possible. While they were working, loud shrieks came from the escalators, scaring the shit out of them. Although they were somewhat safe in the barricade, they couldn't help but clench their butt cheeks in panic. Some desperately scrambled to find weapons or anything they could use to hit a bastard with. Soon, the cause of the shrieks and their future nightmare became apparent. A whole group of goblins came charging in, their menacing shrieks reverberating throughout the room. As terrifying as this sight was, Xion couldn't help but notice an odd fact. The goblins didn't seem to be charging. Rather, they seemed scared, almost as if they were fleeing from something. Stopping Kyung-soo's plan to launch an attack, the young Chad analyzed the situation further. To his shock, a graceful slash blitzed past the goblins, shredding their bodies into pieces. Amidst sputtering blood and mangled flesh, a delicate silhouette calmly made her way forward. Xion, obviously cautious of the new arrival, noted that she'd massacred the goblins without hesitation. From his perspective, she seemed more monstrous than the goblins. And as expected, the supposed monstrous girl was none other than Jaehee, who flashed a brilliant smile upon finally locating Xion. The Chadlet Regressor, ignoring the mumbling bots, calmly made her way to Xion. In a mysterious tone, she cautioned Xion not to let his guard down. Xion, obviously puzzled, wondered if she was talking to him. Before he could figure it out, a sword slashed past his face, stabbing into something soft and squishy on the floor. Craning his neck, Xion noticed that the blade had gone through a goblin's back, causing the little fiend to shriek in anguish. Jaehee, taking the moment to educate, and honestly stunt on the MC, informed him of the goblin's peculiar regeneration. The little bastards would heal from most minor wounds if given minutes to recover. So, the best way to deal with them was to be more brutal. Saying so, Jaehee decapitated the little fiend, sending its head flying. Cheon, even more suspicious of the mysterious babe, questioned her about her knowledge of the monsters. Jaehee, taking a moment to light her cigarette, confirmed his suspicions. Yes, she indeed knew much about the monsters, further adding that she had experienced them before. Damn, bitch, you're already dropping regressor hints? Aren't you supposed to keep that secret? Cheon, obviously taken aback, gazed at the babe. What did she mean she'd experienced them before? Before he could question her further, Kyung-soo chimed in, asking about the state of the lower floors. Jaehee, still nonchalant, casually replied that the lower floors were essentially graveyards. Most of the players had died, and the only thing she saw from the second basement level were corpses. As expected, the crowd was spooked. Knowing such grim details was obviously unsettling for them. Cheon, however, was more focused on something else. Did the mysterious babe just say that she'd come from the second basement level? If so, then it meant she must have fought her way through a horde of goblins to make it that far. Even if she had a sword, it was still a ridiculous feat. Best to keep his distance from the dangerous girl. Jaehee, as if sensing his apprehension, calmly brought up his brother. She informed him that she only knew his name and thus hadn't found him yet, but she definitely would. Contrary to the look of appreciation she'd expected, Cheon immediately went into beast mode, his bloodlust brimming. Before Jaehee could complete her ramblings about clearing the first round, he aimed a revolver straight at her face, puzzling the oblivious babe. Noticing the sudden change, she wisely stayed quiet, seemingly letting the situation play out. Cheon, his voice tinged with worry and paranoia, asked Jaehee why she knew about his brother. Jaehee, still flashing her brilliant smile, told him to chill. She'd answer all his questions, but first, they needed to move to a private space. We cut to the duo in the men's bathroom. Apparently, the private space they were looking for was the men's washroom. Who would have thought? Cheon, still with his gun aimed at the babe, told her to talk. How did she know about his brother, and more importantly, who the hell was she? Jaehee, in a deadpan tone, replied that she was a regressor. As unbelievable as it was, this was her second time braving the crazy game. As expected, Cheon was taken aback. What the hell was this bitch on about? And besides, what kind of regressor openly blabbers about being a regressor? Isn't that something you normally keep to yourself? Jaehee, oblivious to Cheon's, or rather my, critical thoughts, confidently introduced herself. She was Sword Star Jin Jaehee, a regressor baddie from 10 years into the future. She further explained that in the previous timeline, they had met 5 years from now and, together with countless other players, had fought their way to the end of the league. Of the players that joined them, some did so for money and power, e.g., this freaky-ass bastard. What the hell is he doing sticking out his tongue like that? Some did it for freedom, and others simply fought for the honor of their king. Together, they formed a mighty force that braved the chaos till the end. Unfortunately, even that wasn't enough, as they were pathetically defeated. In light of that, she decided to do things differently this time. She decided to meet him in advance. He who would be the monarch of the strongest faction in the league, the top dog and big daddy, Kang Cheon. Hearing the absurd revelation, Cheon shot her an incredulous look, wondering if she was high or something. Jaehee, not backing down, urged him to cooperate. If they joined forces from the start, then surely they would put an end to that cursed league. Cheon, however, wasn't buying her nonsense. Everything she'd said sounded absurd to him. He wasn't willing to get involved with someone so shady. Besides, maybe she hadn't noticed, but he was currently in the process of collecting that iPhone promo check. Otherwise, why would he be holding his phone so obviously like that? All in all, he told the regressor babe to disappear, and since her target was him to begin with, she should keep his brother's name out of her mouth. Otherwise, she'd get Chris rocked. Jaehee, not giving up, targeted his weakness, Junho. Like a manipulating wench, she asked if he wanted to save his brother. As things stood, the first round had already begun everywhere else. If they wanted to leave that place, then they would have to clear the first round of their location, the mall. She let him know that the monsters he'd faced so far were nothing compared to the shit show that was coming. Even if he managed to get out of there alive, it would still be a tall order to locate his brother, and further, find a safe place to survive. That's why he needed her. She already knew everything that would happen next. At the very least, if he was with her, then he wouldn't die. Offering her hand once again, Jaehee asked for his cooperation. If he accepted, she'd help him not only find his brother, but also survive. Cheon, mulling it over, remarked that it was probably wiser to partner up with her. At the very least, before he reunited with his brother, she was the best bet. However, was it really right to trust her? He didn't know about Regressor babes, but surely a chadlet swinging around a sword wasn't one to be taken lightly. Deciding to test her, Xion asked a question only a Regressor would know. How many bitches did he have in the future? I'm joking. He asked her who he wanted to kill the most. Hearing the question, Jaehee turned somber before answering. It was his aunt. Upon getting the reply, Xion visibly shook. He had never told anyone about that before, so the fact that she knew must mean she was indeed from the future. From the looks of it, they were close, as he wouldn't have shared that with just anyone. We learn that his hatred for his aunt stems from her abusive nature. He doesn't delve too deep into it, but it's implied that she beat on him and his brother. Stupid bitch. Back to Xion. Although he still had his doubts, he decided to partner up with her for now. However, he sternly warned her not to do anything stupid. Otherwise, his already shaky trust would completely crumble. Jaehee accepted his warning. Inwardly, she remarked that she didn't fully trust him either, so it worked out great for her. With that out of the way, the duo made their way back to the crowd. They'd been in the bathroom for way too long. Some shady rumors might pop up. As they walked, Xion asked a question he'd been dying to know about. Was he able to protect his brother to the end? Jaehee replied that he wasn't. Spooked, Xion asked if she knew when his brother died. Jaehee, although apprehensive, replied that by the time they met in the future, he was already alone. She never once heard him talk about him, and the same was true for everyone else. Although they were curious, nobody dared to ask and just assumed he was dead already. After all, that was a period where everyone had lost at least one loved one. As for him, by the time she joined the faction, he was already an emotionless beast. Xion, panicking, realized that if that was the case, then maybe even now Junho might already be dead. Jaehee, however, tapped him to distract him from his dark thoughts. She advised him to stay calm. The league had just begun, so chances were his brother was still alive. The best thing he could do was to clear the first round as soon as possible and go find his brother. In an intense tone, she told Xion to brace himself. Moving forward, their enemies wouldn't be monsters, but humans like themselves. At the drop of the ominous warning, Administrator Jay popped up amongst the crowd. The psycho bitch, in her usual cheery tone, congratulated them for surviving the tutorial. They had proven themselves worthy to be players, and moving forward, she expressed her desire for them to grow into interesting players for her to watch. With that out of the way, she officially welcomed them to the true start of the league. She even made a spectacle out of it, popping confetti and inviting some cute mini-chads to play celebratory tunes for the survivors. With the jovial atmosphere in tow, the cute mini-chads took the lead, showing their killer band skills. One of the chads, seemingly their leader, took center stage, his adorable toothpick-like spear in hand. Lifting it high, he slammed it down, causing a bright divine light to spread out. Under the suppressive divine light, the mini-chad flashed a grin, an evil grin. Wait, what? What the fuck is going on here? With a complete 180-degree change, the mini-chat announced the theme for the first round of the league. It was the King's Game. The conditions were as follows. If the designated king died, then all citizens belonging to them would also die. Every night for 1 hour before midnight, there would be a ceasefire during which no threatening actions were allowed. Finally, the condition for victory was to be the last team standing. Upon delivering the news, the formerly cute mini-chads morphed into evil mini-bastards, flying around, excitedly calling for the players to kill each other. With outright evil grins, they told the players to struggle for survival. They were to try their best, because only one team would make it out alive.